All right. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Megaman X here with another episode of Megaman's Legends. And here we got ourselves another legend. Basically, I usually compare him a lot to the song that I have in my head that normally comes on is Don't Sweat the Technique because he plays pretty much the Fei Long. I would call him the Fei Long. And I would call him one of the most supportive person that I know within the closed group that I have. So, introducing everybody to the homie, Reginald Chief Rekka G. What is going on, my guy?
You are way too kind to call me the Fei Long, but I think that everybody should recognize REKKAGINIZE. Uh, the stuff that I put on display. So thank you for even considering me a legend. And of course, I'll always support you. You're my bro, my sensei, a guy who really helped push me to the best version of myself in the FGC. So, shout out to you.
I appreciate that, man. And, first things first, thank you for being a part of the episode, of course.
Absolutely.
And, the reason why I picked you is because, I feel like one of the biggest things is in my beginnings, when I first met you, I met you and the guys, right? I took pretty much everything that you guys have kind of shown me and taught me. So you guys were my first teachers when I first met. And obviously now, like you call me your sensei, and I'm really honored that you do that you call me that. I figure, you definitely like, you're very pretty well known at this point, and everybody definitely wanted to know, like, who is the chief at this point? Where did he get his start from? So what better way to kind of get all those questions answered within this kind of podcast at this point? You know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
at this point, I humbly thank you for joining. So, I mean, let's get right into it. So tell me, man. Tell me the humble beginnings. How did you get into gaming in the first place?
I think with gaming, it was a very, similar story for most people around my age. The golden age of gaming, you could say, the 80s, the 90s. And my mother, she bought me my Nintendo. So, I was playing, Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 3. And then, in the beginning of the early 90s, mid 90s, the Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis. And playing anything from Super Metroid to Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, you name it. I was playing those games. And fast forward to like the mid 90s with the N64, the PlayStation. So you talk about Legend of Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, GoldenEye, and onwards into the 2000s, and it's just keeping up with the times. It was something that I enjoyed as a hobby as a kid, right? And got to talk about certain games that I was playing or certain games my friends were playing, and just in the schoolyard, right? And after school, or those things where you're talking about what games you're going to play for the summer or what games you're going to play for the weekend, and took this hobby that I had as a kid, and you're talking about 30 something odd years later, here I am, still playing those games and still enjoying them the same way that I did as a child. Of course, I don't have as much time as I used to, but I still find the time to partake in this hobby, partake in the communities at large. I still watch YouTube videos of games, video reviews and essays of games. Nowadays in 2024, a lot of people will do basically video essays on their favorite games, or theories they have on the games, or things of that sort, deep dives with video games. And I still find the same enjoyment in them. And it goes from all different types of games, right? Like horror games or sports games or RPGs or shooters or platformers or you name it. So I feel like if it's a good story, it's worth at least exploring and checking out. So yeah, it's something that I enjoy. It's something that I love to do. It's something that I really got a chance to bond with many people with over the years, and hopefully continue to do that even as I progress in my life.
That's awesome, man. What an awesome beginning. So, yeah, just like you, I have my first game was Super Mario 1 and Super Mario 3, which I personally think, you know, if I were to judge the best Super Mario game, it's hands down 3 for me.
I
But
would agree with that
I,
100%.
I think a lot of folks would say, no, Super Mario World will take it, but I mean, come on, man. I mean, 3 introduced the frog suit and the Tanuki suit. You can't, there's no way those kind of mechanics were advanced for that type of game back then. So it's like, it was a true eye opener with SMB3. So,
Well,
but
the funny thing about that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
no, please, it's your episode. What are you gonna say?
But I was so that game came out in I believe 1990. I was 6 years old at the time, so it kind of dates me in terms of my age.
Mm,
But I remember I was playing that game so much. My older brother, I have 2 brothers, so my older brother, he basically like took the game away from me, and I was so mad. I was so upset because I was like, "Oh my God, Super Mario Brothers 3!" And of course, the day and age at the time, it was revolutionary, right? But like you said, it introduced so many different mechanics, like even in terms of like level design, like you could go to different areas and sections. You didn't have to go the linear path to complete the world. And so I was exploring all of this as a young child, but even back then, I could tell the sense of importance that game had.
yep.
And you're talking about 34, almost 35 years later, where games are still matching that type of design, and that's how I think you can really tell the true mark of the legacy of a game. If games that came after the fact still try to build upon or replicate the success of the past. So yeah.
Hmm.
Shout out to Super Mario Brothers 3, one of the greatest games ever made.
Absolutely. Gratefully appreciate you say that. So now that that was your start. Now, what got you into fighting games?
So it's an interesting journey with fighting games, right? Like, I grew up in Queens, New York, Queens Village to be exact. And when I was a kid, like most kids, you go to summer camp and stuff like that. And this is the early 90s, right? So what's the biggest fighting game at the time? Street Fighter 2.
Hmm.
So, we would go, like bowling trips or, when it was raining or, at the end of the day, the camp counselors would put on the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, and we'd play playing, Street Fighter 2. And, obviously the movement at the time, like nobody had ever seen anything like this. So, it was the craze everywhere. I don't think I'm original in saying that. But, even for somebody like myself, like I said, at 6, 7, 8 years old, you see it, you're like, what is going on? What are these movements? What is a Shoryuken? What's a Hadouken? And, I always liked Ryu over Ken just because I liked the way that he moved. I liked how he was a very stoic, very introspective, like always kind of trying to compete with himself. He wasn't flashy like Ken. He was very like to himself, to his business. So I always preferred him over Ken. But the games themselves were really interesting to see these unique characters moving the way that they did in such a fluid fashion. Like I said, it was revolutionary. Nobody had ever seen anything like that. But I wasn't very good in the game. So maybe, and with each passing year, they had different iterations, right? Like it was Street Fighter 2, then I believe it was Hyper Street Fighter 2, and then, new challengers. So, it was basically between the 91 to like 94 period where I started playing. And I'm not going to lie and pretend that like I was really great. But, like I said, I was a kid. I was just kind of figuring it out. But in 1993 and 94 is when I saw Super Street Fighter 2 New Challengers. And, at the time, that was when they were introducing the 4 characters, T-Hawk, Cammy, Beilong, and DJ. And, so a little bit of a backstory. My parents, they originally are from Haiti. I was born here in America, but they were from Haiti. And, they came in the 70s. And who's the biggest icon in the world in the 1970s? Bruce Lee, right? So, he's doing movies like Fist of Fury, of course, Enter the Dragon, the classic. And, my mother was a huge fan of Bruce Lee, like his style, his grace, the way that he was able to move, he was so fluid. So in 1993, with New Challengers, they show Fei Long. And I remember specifically being in summer camp and seeing him do his flame kick for the first time. And I was like, this is the most beautiful move I've ever seen in my life. And then subsequently, I saw DJ, and DJ, he basically was, for people who didn't know, that he was basically a copycat of Billy Blanks, the martial artist kickboxer at the time,
Yeah.
who was very famous. He had the pants that said maximum, and he did his up kicks. So I'm 9 years old, gonna be 10 years old, and I see one guy who's doing Rekkas and another guy doing maximum up kicks and air slashers, and I'm like, this is like the greatest game I've ever seen in my life. And I can remember specifically like trying so hard to get them right on this SNES pad, and I was messing them up constantly. And I knew that I wanted to get that move down so pat because I just thought it was so cool to watch him do this. Fei Long, I'm talking about specifically, and learning to do charge, partitioning with DJ, just so that I could see the moves coming. I honestly, it's like I fell in love then, like with these two characters, and I felt like he with Fei Long was the personification of like Bruce Lee from way back in the day in the 70s, and Billy Blanks, for the fact that he was one of the few characters that I'm a man of color, I'm black. I saw this character and I could immediately identify with him based on that, but also the fact that he was West Indian, and that's not something that you saw a lot of at that time. It was pretty much you were going to see black Americans characters, and that was cool and that was great. But going back to my parents being from the diaspora, I thought it was really interesting to see a character of that variety, or at least of that nationality, to be represented in the games. And to me, it seemed like Capcom was being very conscious with respect to people of different backgrounds, ethnicities, races, and things of that sort. So I saw this as a child, and like I said, I immediately gravitated to these two characters. And even funny quick story, I was maybe in the 5th grade, so I've had to have been like 10, 11 years old. And I remember my friend and I, his name was Christian Larraquin, so I'll never forget him. We would be trading, games with each other. Like, you give me this, I'll give you that. And I remember one time I was like, let me have a list of all the games that you're gonna borrow and the games I'm gonna borrow. And I think one of them definitely was New Challengers, right? And the teacher, she basically caught me like with the notes of like all these games, and she's like, what are you doing? I was like, oh my god, like what I mean, like I was caught red-handed, but it was me trying to be so invested in like learning and playing fighting games and learning about these characters and being better at them that I was willing to take such risks for a 5th grader. But then this is like 1994, 1995. After that, I literally stopped playing fighting games. Like, I didn't play really much of Tekken. Like, I played some Mortal Kombat here and there, but I was never as into the scene or wanting to learn about being good in the games the way that I was in 1993 and 1994, respectively.
Right.
So pretty much for 15 years until 2010, I didn't play any of them. Certainly didn't play any Street Fighter games. And that was my bread and butter. Excuse me. That's the thing that I played the most. I didn't take the time to learn them, so this means I pretty much missed out on all of the Alpha series. Street Fighter 3, Third Strike, MVC2. Like the zenith of what fighting games were. I missed out on all of that. Like, I was playing, by that point, I was going into junior high school, so I was playing, like I said, N64. Legend of Zelda and Mario 64, GoldenEye, those types of games. And then even in the early 2000s, I played football in high school and college, so I was playing a lot of Madden, some shooters, Halo 2, Call of Duty for a little bit, but like I said, pretty much playing anything besides like fighting games. A lot of the boxing games actually too, like Fight Night and things like that. So it's not until 2010 when I actually, well, actually, let me take it back. 2008, I remember seeing that they were announcing Street Fighter 4, and I was like, oh my god, like, they're bringing that back. And even though I didn't really play the games a lot, I knew that it hadn't been out in such a long time, prior to. I think the last one was Third Strike in 1999 or so. So you're talking about almost 10 years where they didn't have any Street Fighter games. And I saw it, I was like, oh my god, they're coming out with this again. But I didn't play it at the time because, like I said, I was playing all these other games. But then they announced Super Street Fighter 4. And I remember I was actually at GameStop with my girlfriend at the time. And, she and we played. She played Chun-Li, I played Ryu. She beat me. And I remember being so salty about that. I was like, what the heck? So, I ended up buying the game, and like literally the rest is history. Like from then on, like I'll never forget that summer. That was summer 2010. I learned that they had a tournament known as Evo, and Daigo Umehara, like one of the greatest fighting games ever. He won that year. And I remember like all that weekend, all I did was just watch matches. And Fei Long was in the game as well. So I was like, oh my god, here's the modernized version of the characters I loved as a child. And I was like, that was it. Between watching Evo, getting Super Street Fighter 4, I bought my first big TV at the time, so I could see like the really like in-depth, images, and the way that the game was made to look at that time, how beautiful it was. And I was like, I'm sold. Like this is the community for me. And I would literally go and try to find, because I live in Brooklyn now, but at the time I lived in Queens, like meetup spots and stuff like that for people who were playing, just so like I could get myself immersed in the community. And then lo and behold, as I did that, I met all these people that are, in my opinion, who I consider fighter game gods for New York City. It's like, wow, like I just happened to do them like looking online to see if there was a place in like South Street Seaport and in Manhattan or in Brooklyn or wherever, just so that I could learn to get better in the game instead of just always playing it on Xbox Live. And then that's kind of what led me to where I am now, where the fact that, like I said, this is almost 15 years ago, but through my persistence and my willingness to be involved, that's how I got to be a part of this community.
Well, that's good, man, that's good. So within this last introduction right here, right, take us, how did you kind of first got involved within like being a part of the FGC?
Well, I think it was dual-fold. One, like I mentioned, it was my, that was 2010, which was kind of one of those culminating years of my life. I was, in my early mid-20s. I was trying to figure out a lot of stuff in life. And I never really felt like a sense of belonging with any one particular group. One, because of like my interests, but two, like, it was something where I couldn't feel like I could identify in the same way as I could with those other games or gaming communities that I was a part of. Like, yes, I played Madden, but it's a yearly release, right? Like, Madden 2005, is it really much different from 2006? No. Some iterations here and there, some changes. But it's not like, oh, well, I can really see the improvements in my play as a result of the iteration of those releases. But, and Call of Duty and, other games, the same thing. But with fighting games, it was like, no, this is the main game for like 5, 6, 7, 8 years at a pop. And you could see the progression, and kind of learning about that in time. That's what made me want to say, okay, how can I find a community that I could do this, that I could be part of this process, that I could learn, cultivate, and grow? And, I didn't know anybody that was really into the community like that, somebody that could at least help segue me into it. Like I said, I would do like random meetups or go places, but it's like, you're basically like meeting like strangers. And yes, you can play the game, but it's not like, hey, I'm gonna, walk you into this community, so make you feel comfortable and at home. And then, actually, one of my good closest friends, he goes by John, but his gamer tag is SP Empowerment. I found out, lo and behold, that he plays fighting games. And, we had met in 2005. I remember he had a Sony PSP that he had modded so that he could play Super Metroid on it, and that's one of my favorite games of all time. I was like, oh my god, that's like man, cool that you could do that, and he was kind of showing me or telling me how he did it, so we had stayed like cool and connected from then on. Then I found out that he had played fighting games, and I was like, oh great, so this is actually like a guy that I know, that I can play with, and he destroyed me. he was like my first he was my first like opponent where I was like, I cannot beat this guy like at all. And what and one thing about playing fighting games that everybody knows, you get very salty, very upset right away because it's not you being attacked, it feels like you are. And he beat me mercilessly, and I was just like, this is nonsense. This is crazy. So, from then on, I was like, all right, I'm gonna practice to get good at this. And then I had other people that were like, well, no, actually, there's a spot that I know where you could go and like learn to play and get better at them. And that place was known as 8-Bit. And from then on, I had met Chris, also known as Fire, and that was like my journey and my beginnings into getting into the FTC. Instead of it being like a randomized thing, it was more like, oh, well, now here's somebody that I know that I'm connected to in my personal life that can help me connect to others in my gaming life, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, yes.
And then from there, it was on. And being involved with the community, it's something that what I realized later on is it doesn't matter your skill level. It doesn't matter if you're Sanford Kelly or Justin Wong or Daigo, Takedo, Punk, Smug. One thing that's cool though is like these are people that even if they're not necessarily like close to me in terms of like proximity, they're close to me in terms of their willingness to want to be involved in this process. Because when you're playing fighting games, it's like you're really playing against yourself. Like all of your habits, your tendencies, your idiosyncrasies, your anxieties, your insecurities, those things are really a big deal, right? They really play a role in terms of your formation as a person. So the community at large is emblematic and representative of that. And those are the struggles that I could identify with. And through tragedy rather, you have triumph, right? Like I can't land that combo, but one day I finally learned like the timing so that I can. I couldn't beat this opponent, and then one day I eventually did. Like it's clearing a lot of obstacles for yourself. So that's it was kind of kismets, I guess you could say, the way that it all came together. But I'm glad that I did, because then I got to be a part of this world, this group of people that are just as much committed to this as possible. Yeah. And I continue to do my part to try to either help people or ingratiate people into it, so that the young chiefs out there, the young lords, they have a sense of belonging when it comes to it as well.
Well, that's pretty interesting, man. And honestly, that meetup at 8-Bit that day, it's funny because I sort of felt the exact same way. And how you met John in terms of, finding a way to play with somebody, and then you meet up at 8-Bit. I met Glitch, and I end up meeting up with everybody at the 8-Bit pretty much like that. And yeah, I mean, till this day, me and Glitch are still pretty close as well, just like how you and John is close. So
I think that's the good thing about it. I think that these are relationships forged from, this is, 2024. These are people that I had met, almost literally like 14, 15 years ago, right? Like that's a huge chunk and part of your life to learn to grow with somebody, to learn about yourself in this process, to see them grow and mature in this process. Like I've had friends that have become, either married or, have had children or gone on to do wonderful things in their professional career, reach heights that I'm just blessed to even watch them, get to. And then, like I said, it's not something, I can't name any friends of mine that I'm still connected to when I was playing Madden or when I was playing Call of Duty, or even when I was playing, single player games like Resident Evil or, Super Metroid or things like that. Like, there's so many people that I know within this community, or that I hear about, or that I see or witness, like I said, grow on and mature and do wonderful things for themselves, both in the gaming world, but also in their personal lives. And like I said, it's that sense of belonging. I don't like to get down with like the toxicity and the negativity when it comes to it. Of course, you're going to have that in every community. And that, there's no particular way, standard, or set practice or process when it comes to being involved in the FGC. And I don't think it should be that. I think it should be homegrown. I think it should be people that are, coming from all different sorts of circles and walks of life. So that way, we can be a much more, what do you call that? Heterogeneous community in that respect, right? Like whether you're from Iowa or from Brooklyn or from Brazil or Japan, that we can all speak the same language through the usage of the buttons that we are having in front of us and the characters that we love to play.
Absolutely.
So, I think it's amazing to watch people, be a part of this. And again, we can speak the same language, even if you speak Portuguese and I speak English or Japanese or Spanish, but we understand each other. It's a language, and I think it's a love language with respect to how we come together, for the greater good, which is the fighting games at large.
Absolutely. Very well, very, very well said. Very well said, man. Okay, so we got pretty much done with the introduction part, right?
Okay.
I appreciate that. Let's talk about your tournaments, right?
Please.
Let's talk about the very first one you joined. Take us back. What was that like?
It was in New Jersey. It was very nerve-wracking because, actually, speaking of which, I remember him telling me, because I met him, at the dojo as well, at 8-Bit, and he was like, "No, you're ready, man. Like, you're ready. Like, you can do this." And this was before even the tournament. And, it was my first one. It was in Jersey. And I'll never forget, I won against a Ryu. I remember a few people that I met there. He doesn't play anymore, at least on in tournaments and stuff like that. But I met Aqua Silk, who was a big Zangief player back in 2012, 2011. I played Zangief for FIFA 4. Chris T, I met him for the first time. I don't believe he plays anymore, but his name is Manny Diaz. He played Adon. I played the Native Impacts, who played T-Hawk. And I got funny stories about that. I don't remember his gamer tag name, but his name is Miles. We're still friends on Facebook to this day. He played Makoto. I played this guy Jordan. He plays, I don't remember his gamer tag, but he played Ryu. Like, I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was 2012. We drove all the way up there. Myself, Fire, there was somebody else, I can't remember. But we drove there, and my first match, I played a Ryu, and I was like sweating balls. Oh my god, like just the freaking tournament, like that was my Evo, right? But I ended up beating the guy. And then the next game, I played Native Impact. And Native Impact, I think, was like, I don't know, 14, 16 at the time. And he just destroyed me. And I was like, oh my god, like, what am I gonna... And even in the background, I could hear one of his family members like, he don't know what to do, he don't know what to do. I was like, yo, you're right, I don't know what to do. He's mixing me up like crazy. He was mixing me up like crazy with T-Hawk versus Fei Long. So I lost that. I think I played somebody else, and I think I won. And then I played Miles. Miles played Makoto, Fei Long versus Makoto. And I should have won the match, but I dropped an input, and I think he ended up grabbing me and doing his Ultra One. And I just remember being so, like, humiliated. I was like, oh my god, like, I cannot believe I lost to this guy. No shade or disrespect to him, but I was like, I could beat that guy. In my heart of hearts, I could beat him. And I remember going to Fire. I was like, "Yo, am I out? Am I done?" He's like, "Yeah, you're done." He's like, "Of course I was, right? Like I lost two games. I'm out of the match." And that was that. And I think I went like 2-2 in that tournament, which is like not bad for like a beginner, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And I remember, I want to say the winners finals was probably Aqua Silk versus Chris V. If it wasn't that, it was definitely high up in the tournament. And I remember taking my phone out and I actually recorded the match. And I believe Aqua Silk won. And he saw that I was recording it. So afterwards, I was kind of like skittish because I knew who he was, but I never really talked to him like that. Not that I'm like struck on names or personalities, but like I don't really know you, so like who am I, right? Like, why would you even communicate with me? That type of energy. And he was like, "Oh man, like, hey, can I watch that? Can you show it to me?" And actually, he wanted to watch the match to see what he got right and what he needed to improve upon. And that's where I felt like, oh my god, like this is actually cool. Like I'm a part of this. And afterwards, we ended up going to next level. And I remember sitting down at the cab, and I played a guy that was unknown, but then later became, world renowned in the game, Zeus. Zeus played Vega, right? One of the cheapest characters in the history of Street Fighter as a whole, but not so good in Street Fighter 4. When I talk about the fact that I didn't win a round, he must have played like we must play like 12 games, 13 games. I didn't win one round versus him. He just beat me so badly. I felt like humiliated. And I remember even afterwards, he was like, "Yo, Fei Long is actually really pretty good." And I was like, "No, you're just making it worse. Like, you're putting salt in my wounds, because you're telling me this character is good and the matchup isn't that hard, but like you just utterly destroyed me." But then this was, like I said, he was relatively like unknown. He was probably part of Team Pi, but like I don't think he really had a lot of tournament success by then. But then he went on and became probably the best best Vega in the world at that time. And that's what made me see it was like, it was Maddie. That's who it was. Maddie was from Staten Island. He played Abel. That's who the other person was at the tournament. But I remember leaving there. I was like, oh my God, like I have such a long way to go. And that's when I really started to see that, not only did I have a long way to go, but New York City is a haven for some of the greatest fighting game players of the world. It's one thing when you're connected to like, the community and, of like Justin Wong, but it's like, well, Justin Wong's from Elmhurst and Jackson Heights, and I'm from Queens Village. Like Smug is from, Cambria Heights, I believe. It's like, well, that's like a half a mile away from where I am. And people like Shine is from like Elmont, which is Long Island, but near Queens. And like Poem from T-Pi is from Jamaica, and like Lee Chung is from Brooklyn. It's like, oh my God, like all these like people, all these wonderful, incredible people are all within the close proximity and radius to each other. So why I say that is because it's like the strong is gonna, the weak is gonna get strong with the rest of the cast. Everybody is gonna rise up in terms of their abilities and their talents, because there's such a high ceiling with respect to the best of the people that are in the world. So all of that to say that it's kind of what helped me want to get further into this journey and into this process so that I can be that. So that tournament back in 2012, I want to say, was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it led to the success that I ended up having later down the road.
Nice. That's a very good story there, man. Reminds me of my first tournament. I think my first tournament was actually... That's a good question. I think it was maybe... Was it not Summer Jam? No, it wasn't Summer Jam. Yeah, it was Summer Jam, actually. And that's when I met up with like a lot of folks. I met up with like... I saw Chris G. I saw Shine. At the time, I saw Daffy, Pi Daffy.
Another legend.
Another legend himself right there. Met up with him. Saw him. I saw like mad people during that time, and at the time I was kind of indecisive between playing Super Street Fighter 4 and ST at the time. So it was kind of an interesting time during that time with that one. So aside from like, well, there's dojo nights where you could consider that a tournament as well, but
yes,
I would say like during the time going to the actual tournament that that was my first one. It was like, I'm not gonna lie, at first it was a lot to take in, because there was a lot of people there. It was so much to kind of see with people, and I'm like, man, all these people are playing the exact game that we come to know and love, and apparently it's a hobby, but it's not only a hobby. I'm like, who knew a hobby can turn out to be a competition? So it was actually quite something. So
I think so. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's so wild that like I said, here's this game that like everybody plays, right? Like you get together with like your cousins and that, or your friends, and you play, and like, hey, I'm like the best on the block, right? Or like, hey, I'm the best in my school, and then you go to a tournament, and it's like, no, you're actually playing like the best person in like the entire world right now. Like, good luck, figure it out. And it can be so daunting, but also so exciting at the same time, because it's like, what if I beat this person? What if I actually, do the necessary steps or take the necessary risks to win. It's something that Zeus had said that really resonated a lot with me. It's to put it properly. I actually used it in my Xbox Live profile way back in the day on the Xbox 360. Those not expected to win pop off, right? It's like you have to have the confidence in yourself that you can beat the opponent in front of you. Like I said, you it's like you're fighting yourself. Like all of the decisions that you're making is just a reflection of who you are, but you're fighting against your insecurities as well. But you have to have a confidence in yourself that you can overcome. And in 2012, I remember specifically because by the time I had met you, you're like, "Oh, yeah, actually, I play Super Turbo." I was like, "Oh, people still play that?" And during that span of 2010, excuse me, to 2012, at Evo they would have like, well, at the time I think it was HDR, Super Street Fighter 2, high definition remix. They would have that game, and it's like, oh well, Damn Die again, like from New York, like here's a legend, right? And people were playing these games. I'm like, oh my god, like they're still doing it. They're not only just the modern, but they're going back to the old school games as well. Oh, I gotta get into this. I gotta check this out because that was the game that I grew up on, albeit with new challenges, but the same rules apply. That I could go back and see if I can make something of myself in this game as well. So I remember trying to read David Sterling's, playing the Win book and like watching a whole bunch of videos online, YouTube tutorials about Super Turbo and stuff like that. And then from then on, I think you had introduced me to Fightcade, and you were like, hey, you could play, people online to kind of, sharpen your skills and get them up. And from then on, I was like, okay, I want to be a dual threat. I want to be nice in, the modern game at the time, Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4, but I also want to be good in, Super Turbo as well. And you asked me, I think earlier, the formation of my name. So I love hip hop, right? Like I love hip hop. And a lot of my gamer tags were always based on elements of hip hop songs or hip hop groups. So before I used to be known as Reverend Reg, which is like an homage to, Reverend Run for Run DMC, being from Queens. But then, with Rekka, I thought, what if I mix, Rekka with Rekka Ken with Lords of the Underground, the song Chief Rocka. And from then on, I was like, oh wow, Chief Rocka, Chief Rekka. Like it just made sense to me to add both hip hop and fighting games to it, because I always thought that there was a relationship, a kindred spirit kind of thing between hip hop, which is like aggression, like being assertive, being dominant, and fighting games, which is basically what you're trying to do, like you're trying to dominate your opponent in terms of victory. So from then on, I was known as Chief Rekka. And the funny thing is, even in my personal life, I don't know what it is, but my personality, a lot of people think that I like to think I'm, somewhat intelligent, right? But I think that a lot of people think that they have this, like, I have this aura about me, or they have this confidence that I can do something for them. So people will be like, hey, what's up, Chief? What's up, Chief? Like, what's going on, Chief? And like I said, like, even the people that didn't know I played fighting games, didn't know I even played video games, they would call me Chief. Like, what's going on, Chief? Like, hey, Chief, can you help me out? Like, and for all intents and purposes, like I said, I played football, so I'm like, I'm not that tall, but I'm kind of wide. I'm stocky. I have some strength to me. So I was like a big guy, right? And it's like, here's this big guy that is intelligence, or people be like, hey, can you involve in this project or in this thing? And like I said, just like the moniker of the word Chief, like kind of stuck with me. So after a while, I was like, all right, man, like I'm the Chief, like I'm that guy, like I am the person that you would go to like look to lead, or to be in a position of like either leadership or authority or whatever the case may be. And like I said, Rekka, because of Fei Long. So for the last 10-12 years, I've just been known as Chief Rekka, or like Chief, like just to like kind of shorten it, because Fei Long has not been in the last 2 Street Fighter games, so it's kind of hard to be a Rekka if you're not really actually wrecking anybody. So
yeah, no, I completely understand. Kind of sucks Fei Long is not in the later games. If they would have followed, I feel like Capcom, if they would have followed lore, I mean, he should return. But like I think right now with 6, I would say like never say never at this point.
The family, there was a rumor that the family was against it because of that movie that came out a few years ago, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. that was a myth. Let me just say for the record, they never were against using their, Bruce Lee's likeness and image in those games. I think it's more of a character design thing. Like Fei Long is a very methodical character, and why why I like him so much is because he's not necessarily like I'll rush you down. He can do that, but he's the very much methodical. Like I'm gonna figure you out and take your options away from you, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of similar to how I played when I played football. It's like I wasn't the tallest guy, I wasn't the fastest guy, I wasn't the strongest guy, but I was trying to be very cerebral in terms of how I could dominate the line of scrimmage because I played the defensive line. So it's like I want to learn all of your tendencies and then strip them away from you. So then by the end of end of the match, it's like you don't have any answers in terms of this. And like I said, it kind of stuck. And you mentioned that like I'm a DFA long, especially when I played Super Turbo. On the East Coast anyway, there's not a lot of Fei Longs. And I mean, ST is a game that we could talk about that for hours about the type of game that it is, but you don't see a lot of representation with that character. And me, I always like the fact that I get to play characters that you don't necessarily see all the time. And I don't really care so much about the tier levels or anything of that sort. I just try to figure out what character best aligns with the way that I like to play, which is, like I said, slow, methodical, like figure stuff out, be patient, but then know when to, start, attacking and start being aggressive. And Fei Long matches that to a T. So it was literally like one of those things where, no, this was meant to be. Like, this is my character. This is what it is. And yeah, it does suck that he hasn't been in the last two games. I'd love to see it, but the way that the modern fighting, I mean, I know we'll talk about that later on. But the way that the modern games are, I personally don't see it. I'd love to see it, but ever since Street Fighter 4, actually I have a funny story where towards the end of Street Fighter 4, I remember trying to learn different characters, and I remember playing. They would have meetup sessions at Queens College, and Glitch, he lived near there at the time, and I was just messing around with him one day, and he was like, beating me. He used to play Rufus, who I hated. That's why you never see that character again. But it is what it is. He was beating me in the matchup versus Fei Long. So one day, excuse me, I ended up switching to Sagat, and he beat me. I think it was like, let's say 5-1 or 5-2, something like that. But I remember him saying, he was like, "Bro, your Sagat is actually pretty good." And mind you, I didn't play that character at all. But I knew of people that played Fei Long, that played with Fei Long and Sagat, and and then I kind of started to understand why they would, because it's kind of similar in that respect, that he's slow, he's methodical. The only difference is like he obviously has a fireball, but he plays in that kind of same way where I'm gonna take away your options. It's all read and react, like similar to when you play defense, when you're playing football. And he was like, "No, you should really play this character. Like, I'm telling you, I think you'd be pretty good with him." And I messed around with him for a bit, for maybe like a little less than a year, but never too serious where I could like actually play him in tournaments or for real, just kind of casually. And then when Street Fighter 5 came out, of course, Fei Long wasn't in it, but Sagat later was in the game. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna play this character. So mind you, it was like 4 years removed from when we had that conversation. But then Street Fighter 5, like around 2018, I was like, no, I'm gonna play this character. And I played him for the second half of that entire game, and that's actually where I found the joy in playing it. Like, though Fei Long was not in the game, at least somebody of that kind of mentality and mindset was, which is why I was able to adapt to it. And I actually got pretty decent with it. And it was the first time I actually really played a fireball character that had to learn to stay away, but still could have the read and react stuff that I like to have in my character. So,
Yeah.
but we'll see. Hopefully one day he'll come back, but I won't hold my breath.
I feel you, man. Well, that's a pretty good story in terms of your first tournament, man. Yeah, about 5. I was telling stories before in regards about the beta days before.
Yes.
And
You were legendary. You were legendary in those days.
those days, so it's funny because I kept telling people, like, in New York, and technically in New York, right, there was only 3 people that had their hands on the beta in the first place.
Yep.
And I was one of them, and
You were.
the other person was Coach Steve, and the third person was Li Joe. And the
Oh my
way,
God, I forgot that. Right.
yeah, so the way how we were during the time we were structuring these meetups, I remember there were times, especially that one night, right, where I built your first PC, custom PC, and
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
you guys came over to the house. It was you, John, Brandon, CJ,
Yeah.
and I believe the Condor was there. Condor was there. Yes.
Yeah, it's a legendary session in
It
that
was a
place.
legendary session. It was basically right in my room. Everybody was
Yes.
sitting, and you guys was getting the hang of playing it. So I said I remember, during the beta days, and that's why I said to myself, man, you know what we should do? We should probably just play it at the bit some more. We got more of
Yes.
it. We had more of the space. At the same time, I got tired of CJ coming to my house on Wednesday evenings. So I was like, let me go ahead and just put it at the bit. And I remember we had like 2-3 setups there. And
Yeah.
I was talking with Fire, and Fire told me, man, you kind of in low key resurrected the bit in terms of everybody coming
Yes.
there.
Correct.
And
You did. You did.
I did, and I was like, yeah, we had people coming through, bro, just to be prepared to just play some 5. And even though the launch for that game kind of was ass. I mean,
Was booed.
it really made us. I would say that beginning really made us like. If you really think about it, it made us have that what if, you know what I'm saying? Because we can legit say during that time, right? We were probably like the best I would kind of say the best in the country at once upon a time in season 1. And pretty much why we didn't take it further, and you can agree with this, was life, basically. Like, everything was kind of happening at the same time. Like, Brandon was going to school. I mean, John, working overnights. You, during the time, you were not only working, but I believe you were at school too. You were at school too. You were doing something else besides work. So,
Well, I mean, in that year, so I became a dad in 2015.
Oh yeah,
so
that too. Yes,
that
Olivia,
took away,
yeah.
and then I was working, and I was kind of figuring life things out. I would say, so what's interesting is that, like, I think by 2012,
Yeah.
we were really starting to get our groove, right? And we weren't all the way there yet, but it was definitely, you could see the pieces of it assembling.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2013, it was kind of like, all right, it's getting there, but it's not ready yet. It's kind of like putting the pie in the oven, right?
Yep.
I think by 2014, that's when it really was like, though I'm not the biggest fan of Ultra Street Fighter 4, but I think as that game came out, like, our skill set kind of got to its apex.
Yeah.
And by then, let me not forget, shout out to Joe. I call him Joe the Teach because he's a very cerebral player himself. He joined the fold by then as well. And I think Fire, I always make it like, for my Metal Gear Solid fans out there, it's like Fire is like Big Boss, right? Like, he is the person that kind of leads the charge, and then like, we're his soldiers that he's helped mold so that we can go on and do these things. And we had such a hub of talent. I don't even think we realized how good that hub was at the time, but like, in retrospect, when you think about it, like, all the things, and not just in like the modern game, right? Like the old school games as well, like, everybody, like I mentioned earlier about how, in essence, like, the rising tide lifts all boats. That's the same thing that happened with 8-bit. Like, we all got the iron was sharpened incredibly by those sessions that we would play, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning every week for, hours on end, for weeks on end, because we were all hungry after the same things. So by the time, 2014 came around, it's like, no, we were taking heads, we were taking names. and it felt good to be part of a small collective of just, in my opinion, killers. But yeah, then like you said, life got in the way, right? Not, and I don't say that in a negative way, right? Like you have to grow and you have to learn and mature because these are this is not our full-time jobs. It's not our full-time careers. These are things that we take part in and we take pride in. But we have lives outside of this as well, and we want to figure those things out, or the lives that we're going to live with other people. So in time, that kind of took away from it. But I think it was both that and how, I mean, though you were, I would say, like, you had the crack, right? You were that guy on the block with it, but the divisiveness of Street Fighter V and how it really split the community into two. Because I remember even at tournaments, I would talk to people that were OGs and legacy people in 4, and they were like, I hate 5. I hate Street Fighter 5. I don't like it at all. And I couldn't figure out what they meant at the time. But then as I played the game, when we finally got a grasp of it, I was like, I see what they're talking about. And it was a very polarizing game, and it made people turn away from it. And then at the same time, our lives were starting to formulate the way that they were. So it was dual-sided. It was very divisive, and then we were kind of maturing and getting older and trying to figure out what our lives were going to look like. And though we kind of kept at it, it didn't have the same cohesion the way that Street Fighter 4 did. And that's why, I mean, I need to catch up on Street Fighter 6. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I'm ass in that game, just because like of how the way that it controls and plays. But we could talk about it later on. But it feels like the people are starting to come back and wanting to be part of that again, which is a good thing. I feel like it makes it exciting to watch the tournaments again, to watch matches, to learn, to discuss matchups, to meet up, to do those things. Iron's gonna start sharpening iron again, and I was talking, actually, funny enough, on Facebook there was a conversation about the whole thing with the way the FGC was in comparison to what it is now. And what I was saying is that, like, look, for the good of the country, like, I'm still of the belief, I'm old school, I have no problems talking and feeling that way. But I want the country as a whole to be better on the world stage when it comes to fighting games. Like, I don't want it to just be, well, I'm nice in New York, but the rest of the country is trash, or the guy is nice like Punk in Philly/Florida, but everybody else is trash around. Like, no, man, like, yo, I want killers on the East Coast, on the West Coast, the North, the South, all 50 states. Anybody who picks up the sticks. So when we go against Europe and Japan and all these other countries, that we're not only beating them, we're dominating them, right? And again, it's in the essence of the community on a local and a global stage. But I don't want it to be where it's just us 5 or us 6 only in one circle. It's like, no, let's all try to help the next person get in line so that they can go on and to do bigger and better things as well. You get more flies with honey than oil. So I've never been under the mindset of the belief of like, well, let me just hate on somebody because of the character, or they like that game, and I don't, or whatever the case may be. Like, no, we're all in this process together. We do more together than we do apart. So it was unfortunate the way that not to place it solely on 5. Obviously there were world events that were taking part as well, but it felt like that was kind of like the beginning of the end, and hopefully 6 is like the resurrection to the new beginning.
Right. I mean, I completely agree with you, because the way how 5 is, I mean, it got pretty good afterwards. I mean, maybe towards the later end of the season, because of the change. It was pretty much the change and shift, and pretty much of Ono being removed, and you got the two new directors that came in and kind of made the game better afterwards.
I love those.
Those guys are pretty dope at this point. Like they haven't forgotten pretty much the roots or anything like that. So the way how they make 6, it feels like a combination of everything you've played before and then some in a modern setting, which is pretty awesome. So
I do like that about it too.
Kudos to them about that. So
absolutely, and it helps. Go
it
ahead. I'm so sorry.
it does help. So tell me, what is this is the last question for your tournaments, right?
Sure.
Um, what is your favorite tournament that you have attended? Like, which one really stood out to you, and you felt like you made an impact on?
It's a tie. Um, and they both have very special places in my heart as a result. Both of them actually have to do with you, so kudos. But in April of 2019, I believe it was Spring Series in Texas,
Yep.
and at the time I was playing. I never. I mean, I had entered Super Turbo tournaments here locally, right? Never really did well. Actually, no, it's a three-way tie. Excuse me, but I'll do them in sequential order.
Okay.
So the first one, like I said, is 2019, and it was Spring Series in Texas, and it was April 2019. And I remember you were like, "Hey, we were having one of our, in-depth conversations, and you're like, "Hey, I'm going to the tournament." I was like, "Obviously, best of luck to you." It's like, "Yo, you should come with me." And I was like, "Nah, man, I don't know, like." I don't know about all that because like the time and like where I am in the game, like I was still playing Fightcade, but like not that I had taken a break, but like life things happen. I was like, I don't know if I should really even participate. And like, nah, man, like you should really come with us. Like I'm telling you, bro, like people know, like you were like, people know you, like they know who you are and stuff like that. Like you should do it. And I was like, I don't really. It took you a couple of tries, but you eventually convinced me to go.
Hmm.
So I go, and really, I'm just there more so to support yourself. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm in Texas. I've never been to this part before. Why not? I'll have a good time. And even when I entered the tournament, like something happened. They entered my name. So my real name is Reginald, but like I said, my gamer tag is Chief Rekka or the Chief. They completely messed that up. So in the bracket, I was just known as my Reginald G. And I was like, what the hell? Like, not even in this tournament. Like, can I get my right gamer tag? Okay, fine. So already it felt like a bad omen. Like, I'm just not gonna do well in this thing. And I did fairly decently, right? And I get all the way. I can't remember who I lost to.
You lost to.
But
So I can tell you, you lost to Yuki Spencer.
oh no, so that happens after. This happens after.
Oh, that happens
Unless I left
after.
me twice.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm playing, and basically at this point, I get up on the cab, and I'm supposed to play Silent Scope. Now, to be honest with you, to be completely truthful, I didn't know who he was. Right? You did because you knew him like through the scene and whatever. But me, I didn't. So you're like, all right, man, you're gonna be playing up against Silent Scope. I'm like, who? Like in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm not. I tell you, like, yeah, all right, whatever. But in my head, I'm like, I don't know who the hell that is. So whatever. So we go on the cab, and he beats me like, it's a first to three in Super Turbo. So he beats me in like the first game, and I'm like, oh my god, like he just annihilated me. Like, what am I doing? This is gonna be embarrassing for me. And it was off stream, but they were recording. Shout out to Chris Delp and those folks. They're just legendary out in the South. If you're ever out there, please go check them out. But Delp and them, they had a little camera on top of the cab so you could watch us in the match. So I remember I was sitting down. You were right behind me, and you weren't really like coaching me, but you were kind of like you were a presence, right? And it was a helpful presence for what happens later on. And then he's on the other side. He's pretty much by himself. But like I said, it's Silent Scope, who I did not know at the time, literally is the best cami in the entire country. And here I am, this guy from New York, like who just plays very long and whatever, but never really had the success to really back and validate like my name. But like I said, people knew me and whatever. But like I said, I didn't have the tournament success with him. So we play the game, and like I said, I lose the first game pretty easily. And I was like, oh my god, like, this guy's gonna destroy me. And then we play the second game, pretty much the same thing. So now I'm down 2-0 in Super Turbo, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is it, whatever. And kind of harkening back to something that Fire had told me, he's always said that I have the fortitude to withstand when there's crazy situations that are going on. Like I'm a lot more mentally strong and tough than I even give myself credit for because of all the things that had happened into like my life. And not to be on a soapbox, but I've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of tragedy in my life at an early age, and that's why another reason why gaming was such an outlet for me. So, kind of thinking about that, not necessarily like directly in the moments, but just like knowing that that's a part of the fabric.
Mhm.
Plus, like you've always encouraged me when it comes to, particularly ST, and especially with Fei Long, like there are guys in local scenes here in New York where you're like, nah, man, like you're better than them, like you're that guy, like what you're doing, like everybody else plays like sparingly, like you actually you have what it takes, so you were always the battery in my back. I come back, I win the first game, and if you watch the footage, you could see that he gets a little like rattled, meaning silent scope. We play the second game, come back, beat him in the second game. Now he's like, and now you can tell like he's nervous because it's like, oh my god, like I was just easily dominating against this guy or whatever. Comes the third game, and pretty much I think I win the first round, he wins the second, so it's last game, last round. And I'm not gonna lie, it's like it's like like Jean Grey when she turns into Phoenix, and like you just see this bursting, wave of energy and fire and all that. That's exactly how I felt in the chair, where it was like, I'm beating this guy now. Like he's not going to win. Like I'm going to go extremely to that like nth degree Super Saiyan. Like you aren't. Like I'm going to become this person in this moment because I don't want to not only let you down as like my sensei, my mentor in the game. I felt like I was carrying all of NYC on my back, and it's like there's no way I'm gonna lose to this person. So when the match goes on, like I said, we go back and forth, but I eventually beat him. I must have slammed my hands on the cab so hard that it's shocked everybody. Like they all turned around, like in silence. I think I went right up by, like I hugged you, like I gave you like the biggest bear hug.
Yeah,
and
man.
when I watched the footage afterwards, you could see like Silent Scope is pretty much in shock and disbelief. Like I can't believe I lost to this guy. And it was like a complete and total upset. But it was the thing that first put my name on the map as far as my tournament success. And then I go ahead, and then the next game I lost to Yuki.
Yeah.
It was like within the span of like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the highest of highs to literally the lowest of lows. He played me, Yuki played Ryu. I beat him 1-0. He immediately turns to Bison, which is a very bad matchup, very tough matchup for Fei Long. And he's a legend too, more so in Third Strike than I would say Super Turbo, but just, I mean, he's still very good in it. And yeah, he mopped the floor with me, and I lost 3-1, and that was that. And even like then on, it was like, who is that guy from like New York that like came with you and beat Silent Scope? And it was like, no, like that's Chief Rekka, that's him, like he's that guy. And the legend was on from there. The next one I would say is 2021. And you were, I believe, invited back to Spring Series as like a guest of honor. And you were like, nah, come with me because of the success I had in 2019. I was like, sure. And literally steamrolled the competition. I remember playing Ultra Combo, was probably the best I got in the country, or definitely top 5, if not the best, like I said.
Yeah, no, he's literally like the best got in the US for sure.
Right. And maybe he was just off, or maybe he just underestimated me. I don't know. But you can go back and watch the match, and he clearly thought that he was just going to be able to just, whimsically go about his day and beat me. And I remember there's even one point where he tried to do something silly, in my opinion, in terms of like the matchup, Very Long versus I think he picked Nusagat. That's how confident he was that he was going to beat me. And I remember he did something and I beat him, and I looked to the side like, are you serious, my guy? Like, I don't know who you think you're playing against, but I'm not some scrub. Like I'm not him. Like I'm definitely somebody that you need to be worried about. And I ended up beating him 3-1. He ended up like complaining, like he wanted to DQ himself from the tournament. That's how bad I beat him, because he thought that there's no way that this guy is just gonna upset me in my own tournament, thinking that, I guess he figured he was gonna win from the outset. But no, I beat him 3-1. I played you beat me, because you always beat me. It is what it is. I played him again in like losers finals. He beat me. and then you ended up losing to him, and so you got second place, he won first place, and I won third place. And it was the best tournament that I had ever done in at that time.
You know, to cut you off, I'm sorry about
Oh,
that. Right,
please.
what made that run back between you and Ultra Combo very interesting, right, was when he picked Old Got. I think the very first thing I told you is he is going to take you seriously now, because the funny thing, the funny thing is, you know, normally people don't know, like, you know, Ultra Combo usually picks Nougat, not because I don't want to say not because he don't feel like he feels he could just beat you with Nougat and everything like that, but how his mindset is, it's like sort of like mine's. Like, he feels like, yeah, he plays pretty handicapped because Nougat isn't really all that good,
Right.
but he can still really inflict some real good damage with him against you. And the fact that the run back happened and he went to Old God against you, I told you pretty much after he beat you, I said, yeah, he respects you now. That's what I said.
Absolutely.
Not because he beat you 3-0, not because he beat you 3-0 because of that, but more so the fact that how, just like what you said before, it's like he sort of underestimated you, and he didn't really realize that, man, you were him. You were the Fei Long. And everybody saw, and then not to mention, it's like, you know, nobody knew in terms of how this happened. Like, you had the shock value at first with Silent Scope, and then now you have the double shock value, but this time with Ultra Combo, and the next thing you know, you had the run back with him, and then it's like, I think your very first time, you was like, man, if only I would have practiced against Old Got more, I would have got that. That was the first thing you said really much afterwards, because the problem was, I mean, you never really played against Old Gots like that. So it's like,
That's that level, no.
So that's the part that kind of, you know, was like, it was more along the lines of the matchup experience, and you didn't have it there. You had it against Nougat because, well, Nougat's Nougat, but Old Got, well, you know, he's a completely different story.
Absolutely.
But you definitely gained more. You gained a lot more traction that time, and you got his respect at the same time. And then the fact also you came in, well, pretty much in third place, which was pretty incredible as well, because you were fighting some interesting matches during your pools. So
I was and it was actually funny because, you know, this year's, you know, I was just watching the Evo top 6 for Super Turbo before, you know, we started recording, and I played Enforcer, and Enforcer played, you know, old Ryu. I played him in that tournament, and I remember we played in casuals, and he beat me pretty decisively. But in the tournament itself, I think I beat him like 3-1. And, you know, seeing him, you know, basically, I think he got third place in, you know, Evo 2024.
Yeah.
And, you know, he lost to John Choi, who's, by all accounts, like, I've never played him. I've always wanted to, but I have such a high respect for John Choi, like, as a player. Like, he has one of my favorite matches of all time in any game. The match that he had versus Daigo in Ultra Street Fighter 4 in 2014, where it's just, I just love like old school fundamentals, man. Like, I'm just footsies, spacing. I'm gonna beat you out. I'm not going for no flash, no flare. It was Evil Ryu versus Ryu. John Choi won. I think it was 2-1, and you know, he's a legend. Like, there's, you know, what more can be said about him?
Absolutely.
But you know, like I said, I'm playing Enforcer, and it's like I beat him. Like, you know, he's a killer in his own right, and it's like I really stuck it to that guy, and I was able to beat him. Like, I'm able to beat some of the best players in the country just off of the fact that I've had like the time, the patience, the diligence. I'm always very hard on myself, like just collectively. But in that tournament, it showed like no, I can do this. And by then I started streaming more and such. Not as much these days because just time. But I was streaming like my matches, and I had people from like Germany, Australia, England talking about, oh my god, like you're that Fei Long. Like I watch your clips all the time because by then I was posting them on Twitter, now known as X. Um, just posting clips of things that I saw, and nobody plays Fei Long like that at all. And it's easy to do when you're like cheap, like Claw, right? Or like somebody like Chun Li, but like there's very rare, or Ken, but you very rarely see any clips with Fei Long. Even DJ, I would say you could see them more frequently than you would with Fei Long. But I was posting them like, hey, like here's this thing I found, or here's this thing that I did, and literally would get like hundreds of likes, thousands of views, and just people would be like, oh my god, like you're like, to the point where I was like, the Fei Long gods of Japan, like teach me, like help me learn and grow in this process. But in 2021, like I said, I got to face off against all these great opponents and was able to come out on third place, which is the best tournament performance I've ever had. The third and final one I would say is in 2022. Zoolander, who's a local DJ player, like I've known him for maybe 8 years off and on. He's always beaten me DJ versus Fei Long, and it's again, I always have the success when you're there. It's because you were there. They were having this tournament at Brooklyn Video Games Arcade, right there, not too far from my job, over there in Sunset Park. And shout out to them; those guys are amazing. They have a tournament in Super Turbo. I think it's like every Friday night, the third Friday of the month. And Zoo was there, and mind you, like we played together. We played at NG's house. I played him at your house. Like he's always beaten me. This is like 6, 7, 8 years, and we played casuals that night, and he was beating me then as well. But I noticed something in that matchup that if I used a lot of crouching normals, that I could stuff a lot of DJ special moves, which I didn't realize in all those other previous instances when I fought him. So in that match, it's just exactly what I did. Like I took my time, I waited, I baited him to the corner. Then I started stuffing him and sniping him out with normals, and then subsequently like the special moves, the Rekkas, etc. And I remember even in the replay video, I watched him when I hit him with this like one combo, and he's like, oh, like he was like stunned. He was like, oh yeah, like maybe he actually does know and learn this matchup now. And ended up beating him 3-1. Like I couldn't even remember who I beat after that, or rather who I played after that, just because he was like one of my demons in Super Turbo, where it was like I could never beat that guy. No matter what I did, I always lost to him. And the fact that I was able to on that one night, it speaks to what I love about fighting games. Like you don't have to be the best all the time. It's kind of similar to football. You just have to be good that one time. And on top of it, when you finally feel like you've climbed that mountain, it's the highest of highs. It's like that's that test that you thought that you were never going to pass, but you studied for hours and hours on end and you finally did it. It's that degree that you waited and sacrificed all the time and effort and energy for. It's getting that job when you thought that you weren't going to get it, that you weren't even going to be a candidate for, but you really practiced, you interviewed as well as you could. It's all of those things where all of that effort and time you put into it netted the result that you were looking for. And there's honestly no greater feeling than doing that in a fighting game, and doing that I've never felt that in any other video game before. I think that's what makes me go back to them. Like I said, even though I didn't play them for 15 years, here I am still wanting to, figure out how can I become or be the best version of myself at that particular moment in time. It's an amazing feeling, and those are the 3 tournaments I will never forget, like for the rest of my life. And the fact that they're all like on video, like I posted them on Twitter, I posted them on my YouTube page, and I can always go back and watch them for sources of inspiration, or just feel like, hey man, you can do this thing. And not just in video games, but in life, you can overcome all of your adversities. So yeah,
that's how you feel about that, man. And yeah, it's kind of funny. I always say that. I always had a saying about, you know, the character you choose is like the representation of what your life is. And
Agreed.
basically, it's like, you know, you choose Fei Long, where basically there's no shortcuts, even though you have your trials and tribulations, like you say. You always find a way to persevere, and that's what
Yeah.
pretty much matters. So it's like, for me, like Zangief is the same, is pretty much the exact same way. Feel like at times that, you know, you'll be in disadvantaged situations, but you have to learn to pull through and not get your hopes up and basically persevere, strengthen
Yeah.
your way through. So, very It's inspirational in
Absolutely.
terms of how you is, man. And like I said, you know. That's why, you know, you're my brother, and I highly respect you because of that same reason. Because you've gone through a lot, and honestly, now it feels like, you know, mindset wise, you're back taking on the world again, and
Right.
you're going back to, like, you know, getting back into the fighting roots, getting back into the fighting shape. In your fighting shape, you got the fighting spirit and everything like that. And now, basically, it's like, you know, you can easily just say you could just talk about any games and stuff like how we normally used to do before. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of a lot of personal things that I was going through, and I think I lost root of who I was as a person in that time. And that's, honestly, it's not me. It actually, took an intervention on Joe the Teach, or Joe the Self, as he calls himself on social, where he literally called me one day, and I was so, out of depths and sorts that I didn't even recognize the phone number. And he was like, "Hey, man, it's me, Joe, like your friend, Joe, that guy." And I was like, "Oh my God!" Like I was so disconnected from everything, and it really took, patience on all of your guys' part, because you guys are my brothers, man. Like, we fought together, we fought against each other, we've disagreed on things, we've gone back and forth. There are times where I've said something that may be out of sorts or pockets, or there's been times where other people say things out of sorts or pockets. And it's like, no, but like we still, are a collective. And, I think that being away from all of that some time, it took away from me as a person. And I think that, like, I didn't realize how ingrained, not to be very, bombastic about it or sacrilegious, but the fighting games are like, it's like a part of my DNA, or it's like an appendage. It's like, if I didn't have my arm, right, like I'm a lefty, like I wouldn't be able to write with my left arm. I'd have to like adjust with my right arm. And even if I could do that, it was still a missing piece. And the FGC and the fighting games as a whole, that was the missing piece. And even not just you guys, like even other people, like what I realized about this community is, like, once you get into it, the impact that you have with the people that are your peers, the people that, either fans of yours in terms of playing against you, or fans of yours in terms of just watching you play. you know there were a lot of people that reached out, like, "Hey man, like, hey, are you the person? Okay, are you fine? Like, what's going on with you? Tell me what's happening." And I lost sight of all of that, and I know that I didn't want to be in that place and space anymore. And I think that the last few months, 6 7 months, has been trying to get back to that place, and try to not even get back, but more so like discover this new place and this new era of mine in terms of where I want my life to go. But one thing I realized for sure is that I always want, fighting games to be a part of that. Like, even if I don't have the time, I still want to watch. Even if I'm not the best in the game, I still want to play. I still want to like discuss or learn and grow. Like, I want to be in my 50s and 60s still playing fighting games. Like I said, I watched somebody like John Choi, who got second place at Evo. He's probably, I remember he did a interview at NYU when they had those tournaments way back in the day.
Yes,
And
Spring Fighter. Yeah.
Spring Fighter, there, exactly, thank you. And I remember finding out like he has his MBA, right? And I think if I'm not mistaken, he has twin children now, or at least one child,
Yeah,
within the last couple of years.
yeah, he
Um,
has another. Yeah, he got another. Yeah,
yeah, right. Like it's like, oh my god, like here's a guy that I'm not to get into his personal life or anything like that, but it's like he's a guy that's out there in the world working and doing what he's got to do just like I do. Or you hear about, like Super V, right? Like, the guy, I found out that, he's a doctor, right? It's like, oh my God, like, we have people that are lawyers. When I played Super Street Fighter 4, Jamie Lee Curtis, an actress, like Hollywood, people know her for as the Scream Queen for, the Halloween movies. She was playing Vega. Like, she was playing a character that I was playing and trying to learn to fight against, losing to Zeus 100,000 times. But she was playing that character. NFL players were playing, these games, playing these fighting games. And it's like this a whole community at large, and it's like I missed out on that being away from it all, and it's something that I never want to do again because of the solace, the joy, the happiness that it brings to see people being a part of this process. It makes me feel like I'm that kid in summer camp all over again, seeing Fei Long's flame kick for the first time, and the Rekka Ken, and the DJ's up kicks, and his air slasher. Like, it brings me back to such a momentous and joyous time in my life, and it's something that I want to carry with me throughout the rest of my days. So, seeing the evolution and the growth of the community at large, of course, now social media and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, Reddit, all these places where you can share your same sentiments towards these games. There's a platform like that, and even we have a chat, right? Like, we're not in it talking every single day because we all have our lives, but we have this commonality that always brings us back to the table, and always has us wanting to be a part of this community and world. So, it's a joy to be able to do that with people that I care about considerably, that I love genuinely, but also care about me and genuinely love me, not just as like Chief Rekka, but as the man, as Reginald, as Reg, as the guy that whenever they have a question or looking for insight or gain, they are just as much comfortable coming to me with it as I am with them. And we're sharpening iron, not only in the gaming world but in our personal lives as well. And I think that's you've helped me out in my worst of days, truthfully. And like I said, that's why I look at you like as a mentor. Fire is the godfather to my child. Empowerment was the best man at my wedding. Like, you guys were the best man at chef's wedding, right? Like, we've helped Joe with respect to his personal life, with moving and his career and things like that. Cam and I, at one point we worked with each other. Like, if he needed something, I tried to hold him down. Like, all those types of things, man. Like, that's what really matters at the end of the day. Like, yes, I get salty about the wins I get salty about the losses and thrilled about the wins. But like football, that stuff doesn't really matter. It's the stuff that you do in between that really makes the biggest of differences. It's the lives that you touch and that you affect as a result of that. And like I said, for me, that was definitely with respect to you in those moments where I doubted myself and you were like, nah, you could push through, you could persevere. And every single time you were right in that. Like, had that not been you pushing me, I would not have had the courage to go up there, and fight against Silent Scope, to go up there and fight against Ultra Combo, to go up there and fight against Zoolander. And in those moments of the highest of my highs with respect to my tournament performances, who's right there by me but my brother, So it's a shout out and a kudos to you, to the boys at large, to the men that have helped me for sure, to the community, because without any of them I wouldn't be where I am. And I hope I inspire just as much as I'm inspired by them.
Well, that is awesome, man. I'm pretty sure you covered like 2 sections literally just now, which is very appreciative, though. So it's all good, but I just on the real, I'll always be there, man. Doesn't matter what it is, and I appreciate you thinking me as a mentor, man. I wish, to be honest with you, at times, you know, I feel like you guys are still my teachers, regardless, even though I would have this knowledge or anything like that. But at times, the guidance is what's important. You know what I'm saying? And you guys pretty much keep me straight. So I greatly appreciate that from you and everybody else, man.
Hey
So
man, reach one, teach one. We're all in this process together. That's what
absolutely.
I learned by being by myself during all of it.
Hmm.
That you cannot do it alone. You shouldn't do it alone. And that there are people out there that will help you get to wherever it is that you want to get to in your life. And don't be afraid to reach out when it comes to it.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, man. So that was pretty awesome for your tournament experience. Very, very
Yeah,
descriptive. I love that. So tell me, let's talk about the FGC, right?
talk to me.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on the modern FGC nowadays?
Um, it's kind of a little complicated.
Oh, do tell.
I can't, I can't say necessarily that we're in a good place,
Mm.
and I can't pretend that I have my finger on the pulse, because it's like I'm part of, like, I guess, like the older, not even guess, I'm part of the older, contemporary crowd and aspects of it. I don't like to shoo away on the younger folks, right? Like, I think you got to let the young killers eat, you know. Um, and I think that it's not something. No community really has a set of standards or elders to help guide that, because it would be too much like, well, it's my way or your way, and I don't think that's inviting. I do think that they're much more aware and conscientious of how they can um, impact somebody based on their words or their sentiments, which is, I would say, ultimately a net positive.
Uh-huh.
But I do worry that the grassroots element of it ceases when you try to sanitize everything. Um, I do think that character builds courage. Um, that you need to be able to withstand some of the adversities that will come about in it. But I don't think it's something that you can necessarily police entirely anyway. Um, I think anybody that is a deterrence to the community at large or tries to pretend to be a part of it and does everything to bastardize it through either venomous attacks verbally or condescending behaviors or negative attitude need not be there. There's particular content creators that are exemplified of that. That I will not say, but I'm sure you can put two and two together.
Uh-huh.
Um, those are the people that need not be part of the community. I think they do a disservice to gaming as a whole, but particularly in the fighting game community, um, it takes us back, and not only takes us back a little bit, it takes us back several years. And for the good of the community, we need to excommunicate those people. Um, I think that we get too worried into what the hot take is. Everything is very much so clickbait these days. That's the advent, unfortunately, of social media. Um, we need to be less worried about having hot takes instead of having much more concise, opinionated thoughts and views on things. I don't think that you can necessarily blame somebody for what the game that they like or the decisions of how that game came about. You just have to embrace it for like what it is. And if you're for the community, it should be representative of how the community sees this product, not how you as a person sees it.
Mm. I see. I see. Well, it's a very interesting way how you said it's not in a good spot, but I completely agree. Like there are some people that does not need to be in there, and
Agreed.
I would say like for me, I would probably say I not saying like I'm like 70-30. Maybe like I said, you're right that I feel like there's more needs to be done, but I feel like it's getting better because, you know, I guess I would say like, folks wanted esports, and here we are, and now
Yeah.
the esports tournament is supposed to be happening, I believe, this weekend. I believe so. It's going to be happening in Saudi Arabia, and now we reached the status of esports because, well, let's not forget the whole Capcom Cup started
Yes.
with the mill prize, and since then things has sort of been skyrocketing since then, which is pretty. Like I said, I feel it's pretty awesome in a way because, in hindsight, you would not think Street Fighter would have $1 million prize just right out the blue, just like that.
Yeah.
And then now here we are. It's like, yeah, now we got that mill prize, and then obviously everybody and their moms is like, oh man, so do you feel like people like, oh, we finally did it. We finally got what we wanted. We finally got pretty much where we wanted to be at and everything. Which, I kind of feel, I kind of feel it's like a yeah and no situation because I feel like we are now entering the door. That's how I feel, and
Well, yeah.
and I feel like we're now entering the door of esports at this point, only because of that. And now, if you just read now that the Olympics is now allowing esports gaming.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So we have the opportunity to have literally Tekken, Street Fighter, literally up there, because FPS got shot on, so they're not going up there. So it's like it's crazy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, man, it's kind of an interesting time that we're in. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, yeah, I think that there was something, and we've had that conversation in the past, but, and at the time I didn't necessarily understand where you were very like anti esports with it, but then in time it definitely started to go to your side in terms of why it was not healthy overall.
Yeah.
For the community.
Yeah.
It's built on, like I said, I mean, it's revolutionary at the time, right? Like, I'm not saying to go back to 1994 with the quarters and, the dungeon basements and the garages. Like, we can't go back to that time because, technology is just way too advanced for us to do that. Like before, if you had a secret technique, like it was really just a secret. Whereas now, like everyone's breaking the games on day one. Like, within 5-6 hours, everyone knows exactly what the game is supposed to be. And you can say that for good or bad, the intents and purposes. I won't debate, why that would be good or why that would not be as good. But I think that when you take away from the elements of what made it the FGC, that's where I have a big problem with it. Or, I think like, talking trash to each other is a good thing. As long as it doesn't get like too personal. Obviously, we don't want anybody to get, hurt, violently or, physically assaulted or things of that sort. Keep it within the game, sure, but a little trash talk every now and again can't hurt nobody, right?
Yeah.
Pop-offs are a good thing, I think. Like it shows the competitive spirit and nature. It's very aggressive and assertive, like I said, a la or similar to hip hop. But I don't want anyone getting hurt in that process. But can two guys like talk trash? Absolutely. I think that, like I said, it just seems a little more toxic than maybe even I was cognizant of when I was coming up in it at the time. But I think that we are gonna hopefully arch forward towards the better place, and we'll see. I mean, personally, like I said, I do think that it is a sport. I definitely like the fact that it's getting recognized as such. I do like the fact that you've had people that have invested, like people like Paul George and Shaq, just to name a few, that have invested actual time and money, excuse me, into the FGC and into esports. That's cool. Like have a team. I always hope for the sustainability of those teams. because we've seen a lot of teams come and go. We've never really seen any of them last, and they're basically like people that are like free agents that have to like go around, trying to figure out what their next situation is going to be. It's like, no, set them up similar to like, like look at Dota, right? Look at like, Call of Duty. Look at games like that where they have teams for like several years on end. I would love to see something of that sort in like the FGC. So like, the kid who started when he was like 15 or whatever, is part of the same team at 23, 24, 25, winning, Evo and winning all these, other sorts of championships. That would be nice to see. I think it needs a healthier ecosystem. I don't know necessarily how you get to that place. I'm glad. I mean, of course, COVID knocked out a lot of tournaments. I'm glad to see that. It's good to have people being in the same space again, because it's one thing to do it online. Of course, it's a lot easier, but you don't get that same hype as sitting there across from each other, one-on-one, trying to figure out each other in terms of the chess match. And like, let it be much. I think we need to become much more inclusive. For a guy such as myself who has a daughter, it's like it's kind of it's a very male-dominated community. Like, I would love to see like more women involved in it. I don't know how you do it, but I would love to see more women involved. I would love to see more people of all types of backgrounds and ethnicities being involved with it. We see that now. Let me not make that mistake. We do see it. I would just like to see more of it. I definitely think you need more representation across the board with like the LGBTQ community, right? It's like, I think that plays a big role into it. I think seeing like the kids like from high school. Like, truth be told, I would love to, in my professional career, right? Like, I do a lot of stuff administration. But I always wanted to see if I could like, have like some kind of nonprofit that was like a gaming hub kind of place where, like if you signed up for this after school program, we're going to teach you and tutor you or whatever in your respective, subjects for school, but we're going to have like a 2-hour, like, session of like just playing like the games. I think like, all the latest games, and then of course the games of the past. And like you have to maintain like like a B average in school, high school, junior high, whatever. And like this is part of it. Like, and the parents will pay $50 a month or $100 a month, whatever. And it's like, no, this is the space where like from 6 to like 5 to like 7 p.m. right? Like after all the after school stuff, studying and all that, we're playing video games. Like, all right, you're gonna learn this character, you're learning this character. All right, first to 5, first to 10. Once a month tournaments, all that type of stuff, just so that kids in the community can learn these stuff as well, because we don't have arcades the way we used to back in the day. So it's kind of hard to have that space where kids can come up and learn these games together without it, going online and all the dangers that can come with that, or waiting until they're 18 before they can really start traveling around in different cities and countries with respect to the tournament. So, but I think we have to do stuff that incorporates all sorts of elements, like in terms of like the age, in terms of like the gender, in terms of like the orientation, anything that can get the greatest net of people, we would need to do. But like I said, you also have to eliminate some of the toxicity, some of the toxic behaviors that are in the FGC. Because if I see that from a distance, and like I had one of my closest friends who got me into it. Like without that, I probably don't meet you. I'm probably not speaking to you right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, having people that are toxic or corrosive, how is that going to help anybody for the better? It won't, right? At least from the outskirts and the onset, right? If anything, it's going to make people like, why would I want to join this where all I watch is rage videos of you breaking controllers and calling people the worst names under the sun? We don't need anything like that. We want to be much more inclusive and not exclusive. We want to be together and not divided. And hopefully, like I said, with the money pots and like the bigger aspects of the tournament culture, hopefully it can get to the place where, we can have it on the same standing as like the international with Dota, or, some of the other like world championships for like Overwatch and things of that sort. Like the fighting games should be just as much up there, like Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Dragon Ball Z, whatever this next, the Project L game that's coming out, the next City of the Wolves game, like all of those things, it's chess. fighting games are high-speed chess, so they should be taken with the same amount of respect and gravitas as a game like chess is.
Hmm. I hear you, man. Very good, man. I appreciate that. Very appreciate that right there.
Of course,
Good
of course.
answer. So, alongside of that, what do you think is going to happen in 5 years with the FGC?
Well, I mean, I don't want it to run the risk of it dying out entirely. And only because, the people that I looked up to, like they're much older, right? So, I think we are seeing a slow but subtle transition into, like more content creators. Like you see Yipes, he's doing content creation. You're seeing Justin Wong. You just had I just watched the other day, your Mats versus Smug, who's one of the best content creators in my opinion, with respect to, the FGC. Like he's playing the new games, he's playing the retro games, he's playing the legacy games. He's going up against, legends like yourself. Him and, Justin Wong and all those guys are very tight. They all know each other. Again, it's a whole New York thing. It's a vibe. But, who is going to be that next crop of people to take it to the next place? Punk won Evo. So is he going to be the next, vanguard when it comes to this? You know what I mean? Like, are people like Noah, the Prodigy? Is he going to be taking the torch? Just a kid? Like, the people that are, in like I would say 18 to 24, 25, 26-year-old range, like where are they going? How are they going to help us move forward? Like, how are they going to get us to that next place? Hopefully they can, and they will, so that we can, again, be much more inviting when it comes to this. I think that the pots are going to get bigger with respect to the tournaments. I would love to see, I think 2016 was the first year that they had Street Fighter V on ESPN. I would love to see that again. I don't think they had it again after that, but I would love to see something of that variety. Or it's like, hey, okay, it's Friday nights and it's PEO or it's Defend the North, and we're broadcasting on TBS, or it's one thing to have it through Twitch and YouTube, but it would be nice if you can get it to like a mainstream audience. I know this might be a controversial take, but personally, I think you need a little bit of a subscription model when it comes to the FGC, right? Like, I think if you can make it right in terms of the actual content, it will lend itself to being a very good value add, in the sense that, here's like the latest costume. Like if you pay, $20, you're gonna get, an announcer pack and, music and this and that and the third. That will help go towards the future tournaments that we're going to have down the road and down the line. Because, video games as a whole, as a proposition, after the purchase of sale, they don't make much money after that, right? We want these games to continue, like Street Fighter 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. We want these games to continue. So how do you do that? You're going to need money. Art assets cost a lot. Obviously, the generations, what are we in the 9th generation of gaming, right? Like, we have Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5, but these are systems that have also been around for about maybe 5 years now. So, at some point, the next generation is going to be coming, which means that it's going to be more graphical power, more processing power. They're going to want to, have the stakes raised for these respective games. How can you do that if we're just leaving it at the same model that we're having it in? It won't make sense financially, and then what will happen is that the games will suffer as a result. So we need to come up with some kind of model that will create sustainability for them moving forward. For the games themselves, they're very offensive now, which, I know offense is what sells and people want to see slugfest. I get that. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I like a little bit more nuance and delicate balance. I don't know how you can necessarily do that while still catering towards people wanting to see offensive, crazy shows. But, at the same time, it's like, you gotta either live in the new world or die in the old. And I personally don't want to be the person who's like, well, back in my day, this was what the game is, because you see some of that banter on back and forth in social media, and it's like, yeah, but it doesn't help. It actually makes it look like you're just the old man hating on everybody. And how's that going to be? Right? Like, how is that better? Mind you, like, not everything is going to be for everybody, right? Like, I'm a man of a certain age, so I get it. Like, if I'm like, 15 or 16, I may like all that stuff, but you know, you have to be understanding of where they're coming from as well, instead of just being, oh, these games are trash and they're terrible. Actually, no, they're not that bad. Street Fighter V is bad. I will say that. I won't do with that. It got better, but overall, it's a game I personally would never play again. But hopefully we can create a sustainable model and community that will have us have Street Fighter 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever the case may be. Because, I want to, like I said, I want to be an old man, 20 years from now that can still, hit the buttons and at least have some slight reaction times. I can't tell you, just on as a tangent, how many times I've said personally that I think fighting games has helped me in terms of staying young, helps me understand things in terms of like seeing patterns and recognizing things, algorithms, things of that sort, even in my professional life. But it's as a result of, like I said, pressing the buttons and trying to figure out why this combo doesn't work the way that I needed to, or what buttons do I need to hit to make sure that I'm doing the link on time so that I can continue the combo, those sorts of things.
Right.
So I think we have a long way to go. I think we're kind of on the right path, but I just worry that the back and forth and the nuance, which is not always a good thing, may help hinder it in some aspects and in some resorts. And it won't do anything for the group as a whole if we are always continuing to bicker and fight about what we want versus, where the community is going or where it wants to establish itself.
Right. Nah, I completely agree with you with that. I mean, I feel like we definitely hit the nail on the head. I think we're on the right path, really. I just think the nuances has to be kind of cleared up for sure. I mean, I would say like slowly but surely it's happening, but it's like one of those situations that, when things like that get cleared up, there's a whole big mess that comes along with it. And then it kind of makes us look kind of crazy. But
Correct.
it's a double-edged sword, because alongside with that, even though that comes with the whole baggage, and then next thing you know, World War VI has started on Twitter again about this person being, doing some crazy stuff before, and then now we're all finding out, and then this person got to go. But then next thing you know, you got people from the left that's arguing about, oh well, that person who's accusing him and all that kind of stuff, him or her. It's like, I guess it's like, it's like one of the only way nowadays for the FGC to kind of handle things. But I always feel like one of the biggest things that we should have as a community is always a PR person, to be honest with you, that sort of handles that. But I feel like the problem is we don't have a PR. Well, I lied. I can't say we don't have a PR person. I feel like the PR person is our own self. That's the funny thing about it, because we have to be the one to not only put ourselves out there. We have to advertise ourselves. We have to do this. We have to do that, just to kind of maintain a following. To me personally, I appreciate folks following me. And but the difference is, it's not like I'm trying to force people to follow me. I feel like people follow me because I'm me. Just like how people follow you, that you're you. You know what I'm saying? Aside from having the skills, you're a very humble human being. And obviously, it's like things like that is like what really plays an interesting role in terms of cleaning it up. So, in 5 years, I kind of feel like, I mean, obviously it's going to get bigger with esports for sure, but how big? We don't know. That's the thing.
I think that when it comes to, like, just be a decent human being, right? Like, I mean, was I young and reckless in my heyday when of course, like, we all are knuckleheads at some point in our lives, because it's like the adage, this is a tangent, but the adage, oh, act your age. Well, how can I? It's the first time I've ever been 21. It's the first time I've ever been 22, right? Like, youthful, exuberance brings willful ignorance, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, like, but how long can you go from that? How long can you make that like your content is literally just you yelling at people and complaining and like rage quitting and just acting like a jerk the entire time, or acting like as if you're holier than thou? How is that helpful to the community? How is like throwing your controllers and talking about this person's stress, like how does it help? Like look at Sonic Fox, like, and I think he makes it a point purposely to be like, I'm young, I'm black, I'm gay, I'm this, and like the world hates me, but look how many fans that he has as a result of all of that. It's very tactful the way that he does it. For myself, like you said, whether it's one fan or it's like 1,000 fans, like I said, I've literally had people on, when I've streamed or like on Twitch or Twitter, they've been like, yo, like I watched you from like this country. Mind you, I'm just like I'm a guy from Queens Village, New York, right? Like, live in Brooklyn now, like, I work in healthcare, like, I'm pretty notable in that world, in that regard, for my organization. And it's like, oh my God, like here's this guy that is also like an assassin when it comes to, this particular character. But it's all because of, like you said, like my humility. Like you don't have to follow me. I'm not saying it like, in that kind of bougie sense. I'm humbled by the fact that you would even want to hear about something I have to say. That you would want to see the posts that I have or discuss things in the fashion in which I do. And I'm not saying that like I'm right, like it's only my ways. No, it's all of us. Like we're all a part of this process. But if you're doing anything to detract from the process, I don't think you need to be a part of it at all, because you're making it more about yourself than the community at large. And that's not the kind of FGC that I want. Like I want the FGC that's like, we may not necessarily have a PR person, but we should be responsible enough to know the things that we will tolerate and we will take and stand for, and the things that we won't.
Mhm.
And you cannot do that through division, through toxicity, through bickering, through arguing, through making it sound like, what I want is great and what you want is terrible. Like, no, like that doesn't help in the conversation. It's like trying to argue with somebody who doesn't understand that water is wet. It's like, what do you want me to say? Like, how do you want me to close out this argument? It's not going to lead us anywhere. It's not going to make anything better. Like, where would you want it to continue from there? Why would you even want us to have this conversation? Because clearly you're going to feel how you feel, and I'm never going to change my opinion. That's not gonna help us as a whole. The whole thing is to say we can have healthy disagreements, but at the end of the day, it's all FGC, it's all love. It's the thing that I wanted to be a part of for my whole life. I just never knew it until I actually was basically, in essence, helped to be pushed into it through, a friend of mine. But I was always looking for a sense of community. And the fact that I have it, I'm certainly gonna, do everything that I can to protect it. And even when somebody meets me and they're like, "Oh my God, like, you're that guy," I was like, "Yeah, no, like, you're just as much as part of this thing, and you're just as much important in it as possible, right? Like, everybody is not gonna be Daigo. Everybody's not gonna be Justin Long. Everybody's not gonna be you. Certainly, not everybody's gonna be me. But can I help in ushering in people, or at least showing them that this is a great community to be a part of? Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I'm not doing that, then I shouldn't be in it either.
Right. I feel you, man. Very well said, bro. Very well said. Now, so we're reached the ending of your episode, right? Just got a single question for you.
Absolutely.
And the question I have for you is, what are your goals in 5 years?
I would love to, in my personal life, I really want to take the strides to be, this year was a milestone birthday for me. I turned 40, and it was, humbling because, you think of, life, right? And unfortunately, I've had friends that have passed away at younger ages, due to a variety of things. And it's like, wow, like, the fact that I'm here at this point in my life, life is a blessing, right? And you can't be so down in the dumps about where your life isn't that you don't focus on where your life is. So in my personal life, I would love to, make a lot of changes so that I can, move forward in my life and be in a better place and position overall. I think I have the tenacity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, like the gaming, like I said, I want to be 45 years old and still playing fighting games. I want to be 50 years old and still playing fighting games. I probably won't. I don't know if I'll, have the wherewithal to beat the 16-year-old, right? But I do want to be like that wily old vet that can come in and still give you, a good run. I've always felt that even if I'm not the best, I want to be a tough out. Like, yeah, I beat that guy, but it was a hell of a match to do that. And I feel like for the majority of my time playing the fighting games, people have told me like, no, actually, like you're you're really freaking good. And it's always humbling to hear because I'm like, man, I didn't win. Like I've almost beaten Mike Ross. I've lost. Like I said, I've beaten Glitch a couple of times here and there. Zaffarino, like one of my closest comrades, he's always told me that like I can give people a hell of a run for their money. People will message me after games like, bro, like yo, you got it. Like I may not necessarily have the results or the points, the league points or whatever. I'm not diamond ranked or platinum ranked on in the ranking system, but I know what the hell I'm doing, and that always made me feel like, all right, like I'm good. I'm good in that respect. But I still want to keep doing it. Like I still have the fire and the desire in me to keep playing. Um, Maybe at some points I would love to, start streaming again, and just, like maybe like once a week or maybe every couple of weeks, just to be like, hey guys, I'm out here, like let's do this. I would love to get some branding up in that respect. We don't have like the eight. I think we have the essence of the 8-bits, with us, in terms of our group. I'd love to see something like that, in like live form again. Like I said, to find the next, empowerment or the next Megaman, or the next Chief Rekka, or the next Fire, or the next Chef, or the next Joseph that's out there. And having that collective, to take upon the things and the legacy I felt that we had built, and grow with you guys, man. I love seeing all of you guys grow in your own personal lives, and it's an honor to be, considered a friend and a brother while you guys are all figuring out the next steps in the arc of your lives. Just continuing to manifest and seeing that, and like just for myself personally, just be a better person, be a better man, be a better father, be a better employee, be a better leader, be a better steward for things that are right and just in this world. Like, those are the things that I think about introspectively and deeply about, and being happy when I am a part of these processes. So in order for me to do that, I got to find the happiness in myself. And one way I do that is by connecting with the people that I care about, that I love, discovering new things about myself, or understanding that I'm just as much a vessel in this process as everybody else. So not to be so hard on myself to get to that place, ideologically, that I know that as long as I'm continuing to work, that the results will show for themselves, but I have to be willing to put in the work to see them.
Absolutely. And I've learned that's where, like I said, I respect you a lot in terms of that. Like, I feel like it's okay to lose, you know what I'm saying? And just like you, I'm hard on myself a lot, you know what I'm saying? I used to berate myself and all that stuff because in my mindset I shouldn't be making these mistakes. But at the end of the day, we're human, you know what I'm saying? And it's not like every day that we're in a situation that we're supposed to know what we're supposed to do. I mean, every day it's a learning situation. We're learning things almost every day, and obviously, the only teacher you have, you find others who can be a teacher towards you, but it's a matter of if you want to be receptive. So, in hindsight, it does, like what you're saying, it does make a lot of sense. And in terms of being a better person, man, I completely understand you a lot with that. I feel like the way I see it is you can love yourself. Like right now, for me, I love myself. You know what I mean? I love how far I've grown, how far I became, how far in terms of in life that I've reached and everything like that. The moves that was made, sacrifices. Obviously, there were times that I was like, like really hurt, but it made me into a better person because I've learned from those mistakes, and that's what's pretty important. And in your journey, and then pretty much in your journey alongside with that, it makes you a better Street Fighter player because at the same time, you've learned from your mistakes, and then your mind open to learn new things, and then you become more of a beast inside of the game than you realized. So you take. I was gonna say you take that energy and you kind of reciprocate it into learning, and you would be amazed in terms of how far you'll become.
Yeah, I think that you hit it on the head. To like love yourself. And truthfully, I didn't think that I've made it no secret that I didn't necessarily always do that. I was always somebody that put everyone else's needs before my own. I was somebody else that thought conscientiously about everyone else but myself. Like, what does that actually mean to do as such? And like I mentioned briefly earlier, I had my own sets of trials and tribulations growing up, so it was hard to get that kind of message, really, frankly, at all. And I think just more on a human level, that's not something that gets discussed a lot. I think particularly for men, particularly for black men or men of color, of course West Indies, Black American, of African descent, respectfully. Those are deeper conversations that wouldn't necessarily be talked about and discussed on this kind of platform. But I do think speaks to like the overarching message as far as like how we embrace ourselves and the world that we're in. And it's not something that I was always accustomed to. It was very hard for myself to give myself grace. It was actually, like I said, you guys that really helped me see that, the care and consideration that you have, the love that you have for somebody, like that matters, like them being here. That part is important to the process as a whole, that you want that person to be around. And it's not something that I saw easily or lightly, but it's something that I've tried to be much more conscientious of. Certainly, like I said, the last maybe like now we're going into August, almost 8 months of the year. And mind you, like even at the big old age of 40, I didn't know that. I still needed learning and growing, maturing and healing to do. But you can only do those things if you try to put the work in and understand that you're your own main character in your story, right? Like, what's the story that you want to tell? What's the story that you want to leave behind? Very briefly, my father, when I was a child, he passed away when he was 49. I was about 6 years old at the time. And I'm connected with family on that side on my father's side of the family that I never even, like, literally, I never grew up with them. And they were all telling me to a person about how impactful the legacy of him was on their lives. Mind you, it's almost over 30 years ago, almost 35 years ago. Next year would be 35 years. But they still remember as if he passed away yesterday, the impact that he had on them. And it makes me think about, the life I want to lead, that hopefully people will speak about me in that same respect when the sun sets on me. Hopefully I have a lot more living to do than he did, but I have to work in this process so that I can be able to see the efforts of my labor, the love that I will try to share and hopefully will receive back in time, and the relationships that I'll foster as a result. And you can't do that by being a detractor, which goes back to what I said earlier. You catch more people with honey, you catch more flies with honey than you do oil. So being a negative and a deterrent does nothing to help us. Being inclusive, being inviting, being warm, being welcoming, those are the things that are going to stand and last the test of time. And that's the stuff that I want to be in. Those are the conversations I want to have. Those are certainly the areas of my life that I want to improve upon. And, my plan hopefully is within the next 5 years to continue to do that, to manifest that, to live that, and to carry it forward throughout the rest of my days.
Very well said, man. Very well said. So, I think people definitely got the gist of what the chief has bring in terms of the knowledge, the humility. I mean, what more can you say about this man? So
They call me the chief for a reason.
exactly, man. So we reached the end. You got any shout outs, my brother?
Yeah, man. Just shout out to the brotherhood. With Fire, with SP Empowerment, with the Chef, with Chef's Kiss, with Taiga, with Walking Dead Guy. You guys literally all inspire me. You guys have in a multitude of ways, both in and outside the game. Shout out to Seth Marino. Shout out to the whole FCC. Shout out to New York City at large. New York versus everybody all day, every day. Shout out to Queens because that was my birthing grounds. That's where, I came up to be yours truly. Shout out to anybody that took the time to listen to this in its length and entirety, because, you could have done that doing anything else, but the fact that, you're listening to me and my thoughts and my opinions. I'd love to hear feedback. You can reach me on socials on my Twitter page, Mr._RGP. I check it occasionally, not so much, but if you DM me or hit me up, happy to have a conversation. It's the same thing on my Twitch, Mr._RGP. I'm always happy to have conversations like this. Hopefully I added to it. Like I said, I just like to enjoy the conversations at large or the people that are involved in those conversations, and hopefully I can add to them in some way and variety. But like I said, just shout out to people that take this as seriously as I do, or try to enjoy it to the best of its abilities like I do. Because without you, the community at large is nothing, and that's definitely not a place that will be good for any of us. That's why we all do this, because we want to be part of this process together. So let's just continue to do that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Folks, his socials will be posted within the description. And obviously, like he said, reach out to him if you want to have like a conversation in terms of anything. This man is pretty deep in terms of having real good thought out conversations. So totally reach out and everything. But, thank you so much for being on this episode, my man. It's a real honor having you tell your story, giving your insights about everything upon your start, your favorite tournaments, what you think about the FGC and everything, bro. It's pretty awesome to have you on here.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. Like I said, FGC forever, man. Like, hopefully, I said I'll be part of it throughout the rest of my life. Like, I'm so indebted to the community because of everything that I've learned, the people that I've got to, get to meet, the experiences that I've gotten to have. It's helped me through my best days. It's gotten me through my worst. So, I will always cherish the community for what it is. And, hopefully everybody under the sound of my voice feels the same way.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Thank you so much again. And thank you, everybody, for watching another episode of Megaman Legends. So, you will tune into the next one. In the meanwhile, you all have a good day, and God bless. Peace out.
Peace.